I've never told this story to anyone in my family, and even now, writing it here, I feel like I'm betraying someone. But at the same time, I think I've been betraying myself by keeping it inside for so long. This secret has been eating at me since I was a kid, and I've carried it like a weight that never lightened, no matter how many years passed. The secret was between me and my father. Though he never actually asked me to keep it with words, it was more like he just knew I wouldn't tell because I was too scared, too loyal, and too confused to do anything else. When I was 12 years old, I found out my father was cheating on my mother. At that age, I didn't even fully understand what cheating meant. I just knew that what I saw couldn't be explained away as friendship or work. One night, he had told my mom he was going to stay late at work. But I had left my backpack in his car after school, and I begged her to let me go with him before he left so I could grab it. She said no, that he had already gone, but I knew he hadn't because I saw his car parked near the grocery store when I biked around the neighborhood with my friend. Out of curiosity, or maybe just the recklessness of being 12, I went closer. That's when I saw him sitting in the car with a woman who wasn't my mother. They weren't just talking. I saw them kissing, and I remember my stomach twisting in ways I didn't understand. I went home that night and didn't say a word. My father came back later, and I looked at him, wondering if he could tell that I knew. He acted completely normal, joking with me, asking about homework like nothing had happened. I wanted to tell my mom, but I didn't even know how to say the words. I didn't want to be the reason they fought. So I buried it. But burying it didn't mean forgetting. The image was burned into me. And then once you see something like that, you start noticing more. The late nights, the sudden business trips, the hushed phone calls in the garage. At first I thought maybe I was just paranoid. But deep down, I knew the truth. My dad was living two lives, and I was the only one who knew. Over the next few years, I caught him again, more than once. Sometimes it was just little things, lipstick on his collar, cologne that wasn't his, receipts for restaurants he never went to with my mom. Other times it was obvious. Once, when I was 14, he actually took me along to a work dinner because Mom couldn't come. Except when we got there, it was just him and the same woman I'd seen years before. He introduced her as a colleague, but she put her hand on his leg under the table when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't know where to look. I wanted to disappear. That night he drove me home in silence, and just before we pulled into the driveway, he said, "You don't need to say anything about tonight, okay? It would just hurt your mom, and you don't want that." I remember nodding, my throat dry, feeling like I'd been drafted into some twisted pact I never agreed to. That was the unspoken deal. I keep quiet, and we all keep living like nothing's wrong. But nothing felt right anymore. I started resenting him, but I also resented myself. I felt complicit, like I was betraying my mom every day by not telling her. But I loved her too much to break her heart, and at the same time, I hated my dad for putting me in that position. What kind of father makes his son carry his lies? As I grew older, the secret got heavier, not lighter. I became hyper-aware of relationships around me. Every time my mom smiled at him, cooked for him, looked at him like he was her partner in life, I wanted to scream. She deserved so much better, and yet I couldn't be the one to tell her. I didn't want to shatter her world. I told myself I was protecting her, but in truth, I think I was protecting myself too, from the explosion that would follow, from losing the family as I knew it. When I hit 18, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe he'd grow out of it, realize what he had, stop sneaking around, but it only escalated. By then, I was old enough to piece together just how many times he'd been unfaithful, how many different women there were. He wasn't just having one affair, he was a serial cheater. And he always acted like nothing was wrong. Family vacations, Christmas mornings, birthdays,
He smiled through them all, playing the role of perfect husband and father, while I sat there knowing the truth. And here's the worst part. The older I got, the more I realized how much it had changed me. I couldn't trust anyone. In high school, I dated a girl for a year, but I broke up with her because every time she was late to meet me, I assumed she was lying. In college, I had a girlfriend I really cared about, but I kept pulling away from her, waiting for the day she'd betray me. I never gave her a chance to prove me wrong. I've sabotaged every relationship I've had because in the back of my mind, love feels like a lie. Even now as an adult, I'm still carrying it. My parents are still together. My mom, as far as I know, is still in the dark. Or maybe she isn't. Maybe she's known all along and just chooses not to confront it. I can't tell anymore. Sometimes I think about telling her, but then I imagine the fallout, the divorce, the fights, the family breaking apart, and I freeze. My dad is older now. He doesn't sneak around as much, or maybe he's just better at hiding it. Sometimes he looks at me in this knowing way, like we share something, like we're co-conspirators. I hate that. I hate that he thinks we're bonded by this secret when really it's a chain around my neck. I want to scream at him, tell him he ruined love for me, that he turned me into someone who can't trust, who can't be vulnerable. But I never do. Instead, I sit at family dinners smiling for my mom's sake, while inside, I'm still that 12-year-old kid who saw too much. That's why I'm writing this now, because I don't know what else to do with it. I can't tell my mom, I can't tell my siblings, I can't even tell my friends. But I can't keep holding it inside forever. So I'm telling strangers on the internet. My dad's infidelity isn't just his secret anymore. It's mine too. And it's poisoned me in ways I don't know how to fix.
I think what makes this whole thing harder is the silence. Silence has a way of rotting inside you. When I was younger, I thought keeping quiet was a way of protecting everyone. But as the years passed, I realized silence was protecting no one. It was only corroding me from the inside. I can't even count how many nights I lay awake as a teenager, listening to my mom moving around in the kitchen or humming while folding laundry, wondering how she could still be so devoted to a man who didn't deserve her. I wanted to scream the truth, but I swallowed it every single time. There were moments when I almost cracked. One summer evening when I was 16, my mom sat with me on the porch, sipping iced tea. Out of nowhere, she said, "Your dad works so hard for us. I don't know what I'd do without him." I remember my throat tightening so much I could barely breathe. The words almost spilled out right then. I almost told her everything, about the car, about the woman, about the dinners, about the look in Dad's eyes when he told me to stay quiet. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Yeah." And I've hated myself ever since for letting that moment pass. I think my dad knew how much it tore me apart. Sometimes, when it was just the two of us, he'd get this strange expression, half guilt, half arrogance. Once he even said, "You understand things adults go through now. Life is complicated." Like he was trying to turn his betrayal into some kind of life lesson, as though making me his accomplice was preparing me for adulthood. I wanted to shout at him, "No, life isn't complicated, you're just selfish." But instead I swallowed it, because I was too scared to blow up my entire family. College was supposed to be my escape. I thought maybe distance would make it easier to breathe. And in some ways it did. Being away meant not having to sit across the dinner table from him and pretend I didn't know. But the damage was already done. I started noticing how I approached people. I could never really open up. Every time a girl texted me late at night saying she couldn't hang out because she was busy, my mind went to the worst place. Every time I saw a guy talking too closely to someone I was dating, I felt that same pit in my stomach I'd felt watching my dad. I became paranoid, jealous, and then ashamed of being that way. One of my girlfriends in college once told me, "You never trust me fully. It's like you're always waiting for me to mess up." She was right. I didn't even try to deny it. I wanted to explain to her that it wasn't about her at all, that it was because I'd been taught by the person who was supposed to be my role model that love was a lie. But how could I? I couldn't tell her the whole truth without unraveling the secret I'd been carrying for years. So I just broke it off, blaming myself. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just carrying my dad's secret, I was letting it shape my life. The worst part is, I started to resent my mom too, which I know is unfair. Sometimes I'd look at her and think, how can you not see it? How can you be so blind? She adored him, defended him whenever anyone said he worked too much or seemed distant. She believed he was faithful. And part of me envied her ignorance. But another part of me despised it. Was she really that oblivious? Or did she know and just choose not to face it? The uncertainty drove me crazy. Years later, when I was in my mid-20s, something happened that I'll never forget. I came home for the holidays and walked in on my dad texting someone. He didn't see me right away, but I could see the messages reflected in his glasses. They weren't work emails. They were intimate, filled with the same lies I'd seen him spin for years. He looked up, saw me, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. Like he was daring me to say something. But I didn't. I froze, just like I always had. He slipped his phone back into his pocket and asked me if I wanted a beer, like nothing happened. That night, I went to bed in my old room and cried. I hadn't cried about this since I was a kid, but it all came flooding back. I realized I'd been living in fear for over a decade. Fear of telling the truth, fear of destroying my mom, fear of being the one to pull the trigger on our family. And in that moment, I hated him more than ever. Not just for cheating, but for turning me into the keeper of his sins. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just told my mom everything. Part of me believes she deserves to know, that she's been living in a fantasy while I've been drowning in reality. But another part of me can't bear the thought of watching her face shatter. I imagine the way she'd look at me, not just heartbroken over him, but hurt that I hadn't told her sooner. I'd be betraying her twice, once by keeping the secret and again by revealing it after so many years. That's the trap I'm in. Silence is betrayal, but so is honesty. Even now, when I'm in my 30s, I feel the ripple effects. I've dated amazing people, but it never lasts. I carry this mistrust like a shadow. I've become hyper-vigilant, always scanning for lies, always expecting the rug to be pulled out from under me. And I hate that he did this to me. I hate that his choices rewired my brain. Sometimes I think about confronting him, not in anger, but in honesty, telling him how much damage he caused, how heavy this has been, how it shaped me into someone I never wanted to be. But I know how he'd react. He'd either downplay it, saying I was too young to understand, or he'd twist it, telling me I should be grateful I grew up with two parents under one roof. And maybe that's what scares me most, that he'll never truly understand the destruction he left behind. And so I sit here now typing this to strangers because I can't say it to the people who matter most. This is my confession. My father's infidelity has been my prison. And even though I never chose it, I've been his accomplice my whole life. I've lied with my silence, I've carried the guilt, I've let it seep into every part of who I am. And I don't know how to let it go.
I think the strangest part of all this is how the secret aged alongside me. It grew up with me. At 12, it was confusion. At 16, it was guilt. At 20, it was anger. Now, in my 30s, it feels like a scar, something I don't even notice until I brush against it the wrong way. But scars change the way you move, the way you live, the way you see yourself. This one has shaped everything. There are nights when I still dream about my mom finding out. In the dream, it always happens the same way. She looks at me, her face collapsing, and she says, "You knew? All these years you knew?"
That's the part that wakes me up with my chest pounding. It's not her anger at him that haunts me, it's her disappointment in me. Because even though I was a kid when it started, even though I was never given a choice, part of me feels like I betrayed her by protecting him. I've spent countless hours on the edge of confessing. I've written letters to her that I never sent, rehearsed conversations I never had. Sometimes I convince myself she already knows, that she must have seen the signs and chosen to look away. But other times I think she really believes in the life she has, that she's proud of it, that she's built her happiness around it. And how cruel would I be to smash that after decades? It's like watching someone build a castle out of glass, knowing there's a crack at the base, and wondering if it's kinder to tell them before it collapses or kinder to let them live in it until it breaks on its own. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever tell her. Maybe one day, when I can't stand the silence anymore. Maybe on his deathbed, when there's nothing left to lose. Or maybe never. Maybe this will always be mine to carry. And that's the part that makes me the angriest. He gave me this burden without asking. He planted it in me like a seed, and I've been the one watering it with my silence all these years. I think about what kind of father I want to be someday. If I ever have kids, I want to give them the one thing I never had: honesty. Not perfection, not some fake picture of a flawless marriage, but honesty. I don't ever want them to look at me the way I've looked at him, with that mix of love and disgust, admiration and resentment. I don't want them to carry my sins. And yet, here I am, still carrying his. I don't know if this story has a resolution. It's not like in movies where the truth comes out in one big explosion and everything is resolved, even if painfully. Real life isn't like that. Real life is quieter, messier, and sometimes the endings don't come. Sometimes the story just keeps going year after year while you carry the weight until you can't anymore. So, here I am, writing this for the first time, letting the words exist outside of me. It feels strange, almost dangerous to share it, but it also feels like taking a breath after holding it for too long. My father's infidelity has been the shadow of my life. It made me distrustful. It broke something in me. It taught me that love could be a performance. But maybe by telling it, even anonymously, I can loosen its grip. If you've read this far, you probably know more about me than anyone in my real life. And maybe that's the saddest part. The people who love me the most are the ones who know the least. But maybe it's also the only way I can survive, by giving the truth to strangers while still protecting the family that never asked to be protected in the first place. So yes, there's a secret between my father and me, and I've never told anyone until now.